Just over 6 o'clock Central European Time. Thanks for joining our webinar on Meet Qt 5.11. During the session, if you have any questions, please submit them while using the Q&A box at the top of the interface. Please only use this Q&A functionality to send your questions to allow us to answer them in an organized fashion. Those questions will be answered at the very end. This webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a copy of it delivered to your email account. Hope you enjoy. And now I'll hand over to our experts, Lars Knoll, CTO at the Qt company, and Tuukka Turunen, Senior Vice President, Research and Development of Qt Group. Over to you.
Thanks. So, I guess the recording is now on. So I'm Tuukka. I'll be talking first a bit about Qt 5.11 and a couple of products that are based on Qt 5.11. And then Lars will be talking you more on the details of it. So the presentation outline that we have prepared to you for today, we'll first start a bit to see what are the currently supported Qt releases and what kind of releases we have upcoming, just roughly the timeline view of things and how Qt 5.11 fits into that. Then a few words on why would you perhaps want to use Qt 5.11. Of course, a lot of it is also going to be then discussed later in the presentation, and then some words about a couple of new products and items leveraging Qt 5.11 that we have out there, some technology previews. Then a bit about asset conditioning. Then we move to Lars for desktop applications, Qt QML. Then look into what other areas of Qt 5.11 have been improved since the previous releases, and then a few words about embedded, and then hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes time at the end for questions and answers. So first a bit, where does 5.11 fit into the releasing spectrum? So here is a timeline view of currently supported Qt releases for their standard support, and then 2 upcoming releases shown as well. So Qt 5.6, our first long-term supported Qt 5 release, is still supported, is going to be supported until March 2019. It's already in its last year, and this means that it's in a very strict phase. In practice, this means that there are no more releases planned. We will be providing fixes if there is severe security vulnerability or similar issue that basically prevents using it, and will of course provide support answering questions that users have with it from the support portal until the very end. And as said also in the slide, for any releases it's always possible to extend the support and have a basically access to the support also after the standard support ends. Then Qt 5.9 LTS, our current active LTS version. It's now already in a so-called strict phase, which means that it will receive the most important fixes that are needed. So fixes to crash and other similar bugs, fixes to security issues, also not the most severe ones, or including others than only the most severe ones, and similar things. So not all bug fixes anymore in the strict phase, but the most important one. And of course, the why not all is the reason. The reason is to keep it stable, not to cause regressions there. 5.10, which is supported until December this year, and then 5.11 that was just released and will be supported until May 2019. And then our next LTS is going to be 5.12. Is planned to be released in November and going to be supported for 3 years, which means then November 2021. And again, the similar strict and very strict phases as explained before. And then after the 5.12, again, a regular Qt release with 1 year support cycle. So as you can see, every third release now that we have stabilized on Qt 5 is there was somebody who's complaining on the audio. I'll turn the mic a bit closer, so that should hopefully work to increase the audio level. So if somebody gets it too loud, so just put to the chat. So then a bit into why Qt 5.11. So Qt 5.9 LTS is a great release. It's a solid base for many different kinds of applications, but there are also some features that Qt 5.10 and now 5.11 have been adding. So if you need any of these features, then obviously these are the ones. These ones are then only found in the 5.11 and 5.10 releases. So you might want to consider them. In the presentation, we'll be digging through many of these in more detail. So I won't be reading it through to you from the screen. Then another item to note when it comes to considering perhaps using 5.11 is that, as I mentioned, 5.9 is already in a strict phase. So not all the bug fixes go there. The most important ones do. But in case you are hitting some bug that is not fixed, and you don't want to just go and pick it yourself into the 5.9, then maybe upgrading to 5.11 is the thing for you to do. And then, of course, 5.12, our next LTS is just around the corner. So if you now go on 5.11, start the development, it's easy to migrate on 5.12 when needed. And then those technology preview items and new items that I mentioned, leveraging 5.12, of course, are all good reasons to jump on top of it. I'll be next describing those in a bit more detail. So starting with the Qt 3D Studio, then talking a few words about the WebAssembly technology preview, and then the Python technology preview. So first, Qt 3D Studio. I'm not going to dig into full detail in any of these. These are all items that are worthwhile of having their own webinars, and actually there are webinars upcoming on these topics, for example, on the 3D Studio, so you can register to those and see more. So on the first of all, if somebody doesn't know what Qt 3D Studio is, so it's an editor application and a runtime engine for real-time 3D. So you would use some 3D asset tool like Maya or 3D Studio Max and create your models and assets. Then you import these to the Qt 3D Studio, create your 3D scenes, program or create your animations, and then with the timeline view, set everything in place, and then start making that alive, programming it with Qt Creator. So on the right-hand side, you can see on the top how it was before with the Qt 3D Studio 1.0 and 1.1, based on the contribution that we got from NVIDIA earlier. So Qt 3D Studio runtime was separate directly on top of OpenGL, not leveraging much on the rest of Qt. And now for the Qt 5.11 and Qt 3D Studio 2.0, we are basing the Qt 3D Studio runtime on top of Qt 3D and also making other steps to make it more integral part of the Qt offering. So Qt 3D Studio is one of our biggest applications leveraging directly 5.11. Of course, others are also taking it into use, but this is the one that actually must have it if you want to have the 2.0. The 1.0 and 1.1 engine you can run, of course, with earlier Qt releases as well. Then the next item that I want to talk a bit about is the Qt for WebAssembly technology preview that is available on top of Qt 5.11, providing so-called zero installation of Qt applications. There's a link for a demo if you want to take a look. I have just a screenshot of the demo. So what it is basically a technology that allows you to just go to a URL, download the application into your browser, and the application will run in the browser sandbox with the rights that the browser has. So it doesn't install anything to your device. The browser itself is the platform on which the application runs. All key browser engines have agreed how they want to support WebAssembly, and they are getting better on it. There are some differences still, but for example, Firefox is a pretty good shape to run the Qt for WebAssembly demos. Benefit of this obviously is that the user doesn't need to install anything to it, and another benefit is that it runs fully in the client, so there's no big server load, just the file server service. So you don't need to transmit anything on the network. Everything runs locally. Just the application is transferred. As I said, there are still differences between browsers. So not only from the Qt side, this is kind of technology preview, but the platform is also a bit still under development. We are taking it further. It's not yet for sure that it's fully supported with 5.12. We might make another technology preview, but let's see when we get closer to that. And it's also a bit dependent how the WebAssembly as a technology itself develops. Then a few words about Python. So a programming language about the same size as C++. Of course, for Qt, this is a great opportunity to address more developers, grow the addressable market of Qt, and there is also an extra value since Qt is a very good GUI toolkit for Python, which it is in some sense lacking as a language. There has been also earlier work on the Python bindings for Qt. There is PyQt by Riverbank, which continues to be developed. And there has been the PySide and PySide 2, initiated originally by Nokia, which have now been continued and folded into the Qt for Python initiative. And this is released as a technology preview on top of Qt 5.11, and this one we intend to have fully supported as part of the Qt 5.12 LTS release. Then, as final topic from my side, before I will turn over to Lars, is asset conditioning. So what it is optimization for you need when you have complex graphics and a lot of graphics in your application. You are leveraging your graphics processing unit in order to take performance and memory advantages to your application. When you look at the picture, which is taken from a recent blog post, on the left-hand side, you can see an uncompressed PNG file taking 1 megabyte of memory. And on the right-hand side, you see the same image using ETC2 EAC compression, taking only 1/4 of the memory. So 75% of the memory savings with largely similar looking outcome, of course, with some compression visible, especially on the green edge. And the additional benefit of this is that it's also leveraging the GPU more for that. And with certain steps, you can also remove even further on the CPU memory load. With Qt 5.11, we are offering for Qt Quick 2 container formats, PKM and KTX, and a couple of compression formats. And then for 3D and 3D Studio, we also have the same compression formats and slightly differing containers. And intention is that towards 5.12, we will consolidate the container compression formats so that it's easier to use across the different Qt UI options, the same formats for the assets. We'll also work to get better integration in build system and tooling. And we are also looking into providing an offline atlasing in addition to the atlasing that Qt Quick is automatically doing to give even further savings on it. So that was my part. Spot on timing as agreed. For the 15 minutes. Now I'll switch to control and voice over to Lars, and at the end we'll then be both available for Q&A on different parts. If you have questions, please type them as we go, and they will be there then available at the end for us to go through. So go ahead, Lars.
Yes, thank you, Tuukka. Just a quick introduction. My name is Lars Knoll, CTO of the Qt company, and I'll now try to walk you a little bit through some more detailed features of Qt 5.11 and what we've been doing in there. and start off a little bit, now with, what have we done with the desktop side of things. Let's start with one big feature that has been, accessibility support on Windows. As you probably know, accessibility support is mandated by, by many government institutions and others. So if you're doing desktop applications on, on Windows or on Mac, having good accessibility support for those is a must. Up until, Qt 5.10, our accessibility support was based on Microsoft Active Accessibility, a framework that has been out there for quite a few years, but has been now over the last years slightly deprecated by Microsoft and has been superseded by a new framework called Microsoft UI Automation. Sorry, Tuukka, are you doing something with the screen? Thank you. With Qt 5.11, we have now completely rewritten that accessibility support to base it on top of Microsoft UI Automation. This gives you a vastly improved support for special accessibility devices, like, for example, the eye tracking device you can see on the right-hand side. Okay, as the next thing, Tuukka, you'll need to switch slides or give me support for doing it.
Yeah, I think it worked better when we tried it before. For some reason, the remote control isn't sticking. I'll try once more to give it to you, so hopefully it sticks.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much. So we've also done a lot of work on improving high DPI support. That has been an ongoing task for several Qt releases. It started all off when Apple introduced support for Retina screens. And we've had pretty decent support on the Mac for many years. But now we've had also, Microsoft hasn't been introducing more and more of that, and we have had some glitches in our high DPI support also for Microsoft, for the Windows platform and for Linux. So we've done a good effort on Qt 5.11 now to improve on that and make sure that applications scale and look good also on screens with high pixel density. So especially on Windows and Linux, a lot of improvements have happened there. You should probably try that out if you have that. We've also done a lot of work to make sure that the multi-screen support on Linux, for example, with Wayland and also with XTB works better. We do DPI adjustments depending on which screen you're on. We've done lots of fixes to our widget styles for QWidget to work, without drawing errors, and that's really nicely on those high DPI screens. On the widget side, we've been doing quite a bit of work now, and we've been taking a lot of maintenance work in there. One of the good new features is that we have gotten a completely renewed print dialog on Linux, thanks to our partner KDAP, who has been working on that one, where we have now gotten a very deep and full CUPS integration into the Unix printing system, where you can really configure all printer features now from the print dialog and do everything that you need to do there. So printing on Linux should be really vastly improved with that one. We've added support for ID-based translations in Qt Designer. That has been a long outstanding, feature request from many of our users who are using ID-based translation system. Done, smaller fixes like a quick text selection for mouses and line edits. And we've done a lot of smaller bug fixes in the widget module, which you will, might or might not notice depending on whether you have been hitting some of those problems. And this is something we're going to be continuing now and moving forward. The widgets module is a very stable one. There are not, it's feature complete in the sense that we do not have too many feature requests there, but we do have a certain amount of bugs, and we are working very hard on fixing as many as possible of those moving forward. Okay, let's move over a little bit to QML. That's the other side of our UI story. And we've been doing quite a bit of work there on the language side of things over the last release. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction into that one, maybe go slightly deeper into the technical side for this one. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. So what happened there is that, Qt 5.10 and earlier versions had actually a rather complex pipeline for compiling QML into something that, we could run on the hardware, QML, we had two modes. We could compile it ahead of time using, the Qt Quick compiler, or since Qt 5.9, the compiler cache. Or, we could, just load all of that at runtime and then compile it down to something that could be executed, either bytecode or JITted. The problem we were seeing were that, the complex pipeline that we had led to rather slow application startup times. The code base that was very difficult to maintain and very complex. We couldn't be mixing between interpreted and JITted code. It was either the one or the other, and there was no in between. And our bytecode interpreter actually was relatively slow. Because of that complex design, also it turned out to become relatively difficult to optimize the JIT any further. And due to having to maintain those two backends and then both of them being relatively complex, it turned out to be rather difficult to introduce new features, which is something that we are doing now after Qt 5.11, and I'll be talking about that a little bit at the end or later. So the compiler pipeline as it is in, before Qt 5.11 looks a little bit like that. We're getting QML code, and then in the QML module, we would be passing that through Alexa and the parser, generate an AST out of that, an abstract syntax tree. We had then a class called CodeGen, which generated an intermediate representation out of this one, which was, some relatively high-level bytecode. We then piped all of that into our optimizer, which was a extremely complex beast, trying to converting the intermediate representation a couple of times, doing lots of transformations on it. Similar things like a real compiler does, moving it into SSA form and other things. And then the output of the compiler was an optimized intermediate representation that we then, moved into what we call iCell, the instruction selections, where we had two versions, one for bytecode and one for assembly. Both of those also generated something called a compilation unit, which was auxiliary data, read-only data that comes together with the bytecode or the JITted assembly. As you can see, it's a rather long pipeline, and it took a lot of time and really, hurt especially our startup time performance. So with Qt 5 and the new compiler architecture, here's what we can do. And not everything here is implemented, but pretty much most of it. So we've basically kept the front end, the Alexa, and the parser. But then the code generator that we had directly generates bytecode that we can execute, and the compilation unit associated with it. We can then execute that one, and then, as a second step, hopefully, and that's the part that's currently not implemented, the optimizer, get some tracing information out of that with JavaScript, put it into an optimizer, and generate assembly out of it. What's implemented in 5.11 is everything but the optimizer box. We do have a simple JIT behind the bytecode that we can use to generate, faster assembly out of it. And we've been seeing some pretty good results out of that one. The code turned out to be, much simpler, much easier to maintain. We could do refactorings that we had only been dreaming of before, like, really making JavaScript function calls, and with that also QML function calls much, much faster. So the overhead of function call overhead was, reduced by a very large factor, probably as much as 80%. We refactored the bytecode interpreter and have a completely new bytecode format that's almost twice as fast as before. And you can see that in the numbers on the right-hand side. If you compare the old interpreter to the new one, especially on 64-bit Linux or x86-64, you'll see the factor of 2 improvement there. On ARM, it's a slightly less, but still, an improvement that is very significant. And that's very important also because on some platforms like on iOS and on Windows, WinRT, we can't use the JIT because the platform doesn't allow us to do that. And a fast interpreter is thus very important to really get good performance out of these platforms. On top of that, we added a very simple, what we call a baseline JIT, which was already beating the old JIT in performance on pretty much all our platforms, or at least is equal to it. And it's a very simple one, something that we can work on now in the future and improve further. The startup time is reduced significantly, and since the bytecode format is much more compact than the generated JIT code, our QML cache files are much smaller than before. We've also, with this change, we were able to now bring out the QtQuick compiler into the open source version. So we'll have that available across all versions, both commercial and open source. And we do have a much simpler architecture now that we can see is much easier to work with. And with that, we can move faster in the future. We're currently working on ECMAScript 7 support, for the JavaScript engine, and have come actually very far in the last 3 months approximately, where most things are in place. The biggest missing feature currently is support for classes, and those I expect we will also be able to manage for 5.12 in time for 5.12. We are also looking then at tracing JIT to improve the performance further. Have some prototypes currently in the works, and this is looking very promising, beating the current baseline JIT already by a good factor. And then we will be longer term also looking into, really using this as a basis to also, improve on the QML as a language. One of our thoughts here is, for example, to add type-safe QML. As you know, JavaScript as a language is inherently not type-safe, but type safety and getting good support, from the compiler is essential to making refactoring easy. So one of our biggest wishes for QML in the future is to have a mode where you can really have that type safety. And that's something we'll be working on probably after Qt 5.12. QtQuick controls, on a little bit on the higher, on the graphical side of QtQuick and QML. They have seen a significant amount of work since Qt 5.9, and we're now nearing feature completion, which means, we have pretty much all the widgets and all the controls that we could think of implemented. The major missing feature currently is still a table view component. That one is scheduled for Qt 5.12, and we're working very hard on getting that ready in time for the Qt 5.12 release. They're also stylable. We have, a default look and feel. We have, for iOS and Android, or for Android and Windows, we have material and universal styles. We have an image-based style where you can put in your own assets and create your own look and feel with that one. And they also have a vastly improved performance over QtQuick Controls 1. So this is the path where we're going forward. We'll be pushing and doing more work on those controls to make them really a fantastic and real replacement for the Controls 1, but also but also something that you can really use for any kind of apps that you might be doing in the future. Of course, we have also quite a lot of enhancements in other areas of Qt, and I'll go through some of those now. Qt 3D. We've done a lot of work in Qt 3D, especially to improve performance and memory consumption. You can see on the right-hand side, you can see some graphs there showing you the amount of things we have managed to do. Qt 3D had in Qt 5.9 had a relatively large base overhead for instantiating just one instance of a Qt 3D engine, and we have been able to cut down that overhead significantly. If you look at the cardboard example, one of the simplest examples we have, it went down from 100 to almost 10 megabytes with 5.11. Of course, if you look at the second example, Scene 3D, you can see that this is really what we cut off is that overhead. So if you have a more complex scene, of course that will take up its memory. But at least we got rid of that one. And we've also done a lot of work there to improve on the performance side. But, another example down there is still, the memory usage, the clusters. That's also using Qt and Qt3D combined to do an instrument cluster for a car. And also there you can see that the memory usage was cut down by around 40%, which is very significant. On the CPU side, we have around 50% reduction in CPU utilization over many use cases and over Qt 5.9. Done a large amount of bug fixes in there, some new features as well in 5.10, in 5.11, there's a couple of new features. One of them is being able to do ray casts in world space or screen space with arbitrary rays. Very important if you want to do some ray casting there. And we are also now using, as Tuukka already said, Qt3D as the basis for the new Qt3D Studio runtime. And Qt3D Studio is an important area for us moving forward, as it really allows you to work with UI designers to create 3D, user interfaces and 3D applications that really make better use of 3D assets. We've upgraded our Unicode support to fully support Unicode 10. This has been long in the going. We've been in between, upgrading certain parts, to newer Unicode versions. I think the last upgrade before was up to Unicode 7, but some parts have stayed actually on the old data, especially our bidirectional algorithm. So the algorithm to render Arabic and Hebrew text was actually getting relatively outdated, was still, compliant with a version of Unicode that was around Unicode 4 or maybe 5. And we've gotten a fully rewritten algorithm into Qt 5.11 that's fully, compliant with what's required by the Unicode 10 spec. We've updated all the Unicode property data to be compliant with the spec. Our text segmentation algorithms, line breaking algorithms, all of those have gotten updated, and we've updated also, in addition, our OpenType support that we're using to the latest version of half-bus, meaning, you'll get a lot of additional languages supported for free there from the front-end rendering side. QtLocation, we've done quite a bit of work there, and we've added actually a complete new large feature there by adding experimental turn-by-turn navigation support. This is still, experimental in a tech preview state, but you can see on the right-hand side a screenshot of how that looks using the Macbox backend. We've done lots of work to improve, performance, for example, on the map polyline or QtLocation really gets you a lot of good stuff there and has a lot of good new features. If you want to use it, try it out. Other new features, we have Qt Web Engine, which we updated, of course, to a newer Chromium version. We updated that one to Chromium 65 with Qt 5.11. And added a couple of new features, like, for example, a configurable cookie filter, where you can basically filter out cookies. And we've embedded the development tools for Chromium now into Qt Web Engine, so you don't have to start a separate process to debug your HTML in there. On Qt Network, we've added HTTP2 support on iOS and an HTTP2 direct attribute in Qt Network Access Manager to avoid the whole HTTP2 negotiation if you already know that the other side supports it. Done a lot of work also on our documentation generation. As you might or might not know, our documentation is developed in line with our source code, with our classes, and we have a tool called QDoc that parses, basically all our source code and generates the documentation out of it. That has proven to become a little bit problematic over the last years, because QDoc was still using an old C++ 98 compliant C++ parser that we had written ourselves a couple of years ago. We have now upgraded that one and make use of libclang to get really better C++ support, so that QDoc can now also handle any C++ 11, 14, or 17 constructs that you throw at it, and generate proper documentation for those methods. So that's covering a little bit Qt for application development and the things that are in there. We have a couple of new things also, that are specific to the embedded side, and I'll go through those relatively quickly with you now as well, before we go over to the question and answer section. One new thing is the Qt Safe renderer. As you might have heard, we've had that available since around half a year now. Released the first version, I think, before Christmas. That is a renderer that allows you to integrate, Qt applications with something where you have a requirement for functional safety, and certain parts of your user interface need to fulfill functional safety requirements. This renderer is now, since actually a couple of days, certified for functional safety, using for both the ASIL-D for road vehicles standard, SIL-3 industrial, and SIL-4 for railways, and IEC 62304 for medical devices. So you have a very good set of certifications there. There's two components in there basically. There's a development tooling with a visual designer that integrates with the Qt Quick Designer, and there's a rendering component that actually does this rendering of the safety critical parts of the user interface. So you can very easily, define your user interface, specify which parts of it are safety critical, and those will be then, taken out by the tooling and, rendered by that safety critical renderer, whereas the rest of it will be rendered by standard Qt rendering paths, i.e., for example, Qt Quick. Integration is currently available for certain certified RTOSes, QNX 7 and Integrity 11. Other real-time operating systems are usually feasible if that is required. We have done quite a few improvements on the EGL full screen plugin. That's the most commonly used plugin on embedded Linux if you're not using Wayland as your display system. We have now support for a new and for frame buffer formats differing from XRGB 8888. So something else than 32-bit color depth without alpha channel. We can support ARGB with alpha channel. We now also support RGB 565, so a 16-bit color depth, which is helpful for especially low-end embedded devices where you don't have as much memory available. We have some experimental support for screen cloning, so you can clone that screen that you're seeing and show it on a second screen as well. We added support for operating with the Linux Direct Rendering Manager render nodes, which is important so that non-privileged processes can actually access and render to the screen. So far, you had to have root privileges to render with the OGEGLFS plugin. That is no longer required now. And finally, we've also added an experimental backend for compositing Qt content with other hardware layers using the graphics hardware and the different hardware layers exposed by the graphics hardware. This is currently still limited to hardware supporting VSP2. That is, for example, Renesas, Arca platform, and maybe a couple of others. But we will be working on extending that support also to cover other hardware. And also add that to the Qt Wayland compositor for Qt 5.12. We've done quite a bit more work also in helping industrial and infrastructure automation. We've added, improved our CAN bus support in Qt Serial Bus, a couple of new features there, and fixed a lot of bugs. We are now fully supporting the KNX protocol for home automation. And we've also added a technology preview for OPC UA, which is, the central standard of the, European Industry 4.0 story, which allows you to do seamless communication between your IT and industrial production systems, and our focus here on that one has been on the client side. So you have a client-side applications, and you do human-machine interfaces or application development and supporting that part of the story, because OPC UA is a very big standard. So that basically sums up pretty much the new features that we have in Qt 5.11. But before we'll go over to the questions and answers, just a little teaser here. We also, for those of you who are working in the automotive space, we also have a new version of the Qt Automotive Suite coming up in this month, labeled now Qt Automotive Suite 5.11. So we've changed the version numbering to match our Qt version numbering, and a couple of new features in there. Updates to Gamma Ray, QML Live, new integration into Qt Creator. So lots of cool new stuff, and we'll go through that once the announcement comes out in more detail, and we'll probably also have a webinar on this one in the future. And with that, I think I'd like to just go over to the questions and answers section. Let's see if you have any questions asked. Please type them into the Q&A box, and we'll try to answer them as good as we can. Maybe I can start out with the first question that I'm seeing here. The first question was whether there would be any LTS support for Qt 5.11. That's a very simple one to answer. The Qt 5.11 is a standard release. We will not have any LTS support for that one. 5.12 will be an LTS release again, and we will be, it should be relatively easily to upgrade to 5.12. So if you started a new development project now, start with 5.11, and then you can easily upgrade to 5.12 LTS in November. Tuukka, you might want to take a question as well.
Yeah, so and related to this, so of course you can extend the support of any version from our support team as a paid extension. But as Lars mentioned, especially for the case of 5.11, since the next LTS is just the release after that, it's probably quite rare the case. But in case it happens, it's possible to do. So then the next one was about component parity. This was actually a bit answered already during the presentation at the later stage. So yes, table view is coming. Whether it supports all the bells and whistles that you want, that remains to be seen. You can check the development of the table view from the dev branch of Qt, which will later on become Qt 5.12.
Yes.
And we'll continue the path of having the controls 2 as the one that people should be using, and that provides all the necessary features.
Yes, I think the only place where we might not reach full feature parity is in the very short term is on the native look and feel on the desktop.
Yes, so that would need to come through the image-based styles or one of the default styles. So we wouldn't be inheriting the styles from the system like we do for widgets and controls.
But for everything else, we do aim at having at some point full feature parity. But as with whether table view will have that in 5.12 or whether we'll take it slightly longer remains to be seen. But once we have the alpha out for 5.12, that will probably be sometime end of August. Please go ahead, try it out, and give us feedback. We then still have some possibility to adjust things.
Then we have some questions for Vulkan support. I can take that. So yes, we have Vulkan support on 5.11, which is a bit evolved from the 5.10, but roughly it's the same. So there's a blog series about Vulkan in 5.10, so you can check from that how it is. So you can use the QVulkan classes for QVulkan window and QVulkan surface, and those to use Vulkan content with Qt 5.11. Yes.
Yeah. There were more questions around Qt Quick Controls 2, actually calendar and time component, and tree view, whether those are planned. I thought we had some calendar and time components already in there.
Yeah,
So
but they're currently still on the labs and lab side. So this we need to see what gets done in time for 5.12.
yeah, well, I mean, if
You
they
can pull it from the labs but it's not as part of the controls 2 yet.
yeah. Well, let's see what we can do to bring them in and make them fully supported. Tree view is something that also we have been discussing about quite a bit. So yeah, as said, our goal is to have that fully feature parity at some point in the future, but we're getting close now. Qt remote objects, will it leave the technology preview status in 5.12? This is something we have actually the Qt Contributor Summit coming up next week. As you might know, the Qt remote objects have been a contribution by Ford to Qt, and we will most likely discuss that over there. And I think we'll probably have a better answer for you after that one. But I mean, our goal actually is to bring that to make that fully supported. There's a couple of things we need to iron out before we can do that, but I hope we can get those sorted in the near future.
But in the Qt Automotive Suite, when already now the demonstrations of digital cockpit that are leveraging different operating systems for cluster and IVI are using actively the remote objects. So it is a good and solid technology use. And yes, as Lars said, we hope to be able to get it fully supported with the 5.12 LTS.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question around the high DPI support, whether it needs to be enabled in the code or is applied automatically. I think it should be applied automatically. That is my understanding. At least it hasn't changed from the mechanisms we had before 5.11. Then there was a question about the minimum supported OpenGL version for Qt 3D. Currently, there is still at OpenGL 2. And OpenGL, yes.
Yeah, and obviously, if you use OpenGL, or if your hardware only supports OpenGL 2.0, or if you are limited by, for example, your hypervisor only supporting OpenGL ES 2.0, that means that you won't be able to use the OpenGL 3 version features, obviously. So you can run, but those parts of the Qt3D and Qt3D Studio that leverage those newer version features then obviously are not usable in your app.
Yes, so there are certain limitations. So with OpenGL 2, most physics-based materials, for example, will probably not work, and these kind of things. There's a question around, native client and mscript, and what about WT and Qt? Can't really answer that one because WT is not really developed by us, and you'd have to talk to the people who are developing that one to figure out more. There's a question around QtLocation. Do you need to use QML, or can you use it also with basically classical or with C++? QtLocation comes with both a QML and the C++ API, so you can use either at your choosing.
Just a quick reminder, if you have any more questions, please submit them through the Q&A box at the top of the interface.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think we have now covered all the open questions that we had. So whatever you have typed in so far. So I think we had quite a lot of time for the questions. So if you are still typing, so please go ahead. I'll do one more reminder about the upcoming webinars. So please continue to type the questions. We can get back to those. But so there are a few other webinars coming up. You can see them in the screen, and there's also a link where you can register to these and even some more webinars that are coming out later on. There's also a quite nice array of past webinars, which you can access and see a recording of if you want to.
Okay, we've got two more questions. First one is around the recent news from Apple. Many of you might have heard that Apple on Monday announced that they'll be deprecating OpenGL support for Mac OS and iOS. So the question here is really, what's happening with that and what are we doing? So yeah, I mean, this is something we just heard that news a couple of days ago. So of course, that's something we still also have to digest a little bit. Apple has with that probably shuffled quite a large chunk of work over onto our plate. And we'll need to figure out how to do that. But we did have already, for quite a while a plan on seeing, how we can work with more and different graphics APIs. I mean, it was, already, you could already see that things are starting to diverge, and OpenGL wouldn't be the one answer. You had Direct3D 12 on Windows, Vulkan coming up as the Kronos standard. And then Apple has been very active in pushing Metal also over the last couple of years. So our goal now is, and that's probably a more of a longer term goal. I mean, I'm not sure, this will not happen for 5.12. Maybe, maybe we'll have a good part available for 5.15 then. It's something where we want to really, provide proper encapsulations for many of those graphics APIs, so that you can basically, we can isolate you from the underlying APIs and allow you to do what you want to do. Qt3D is a very good basis for that. It already has concepts like materials, like shaders, and many other things that are in principle independent of the underlying graphics API. And we'll extend on that one and see what we see how we can make this easy for us to use and also give you very APIs there. But as said, I mean, this is probably more of a long-term project. It'll take us a little while.
Then there's another question related to what's the base version of Visual Studio required for Qt 5.11. So the base version, I mean, what is the recommended version, if that's the question? So 2017, but 2015 also works. We offer support for both. And then there was another question, when can we expect any Qt 6? Oh, that's a good one. We've been, starting to think a little bit about Qt 6 now over the years. We don't have any defined timeline yet. One possible slot could be, and now I'm very much speculating because this depends not only on us, but it also depends on the Qt community and the ecosystem around us. So we'll be discussing some of those things next week at the Contributor Summit. But the possible slot could be, after 5.15. Certainly, I don't think anything will happen before then. Let's see. We also still have to define, what exactly Qt 6 would look like. I mean, one of our goals has to be that it's as compatible as possible to Qt 5. But as said, we don't really have those answers yet. Bear with us. We might have we might know more in half a year from now. There was also a clarification question that will the versions for 5.12 be the same as for 5.15? As I answered, yes, that's the intention, so that we won't be dropping the 2015 away. We did drop the 2013 because it wasn't fully C++11 compatible one, but now with the ones that we have now for Visual Studio or MSVC compiler, we believe we can go towards the 5.12 as well.
Okay.
We are soon approaching the end, so we might not be able to answer all your questions.
But let's see. I mean, I'll go. There's a quick question. I'll just mention that there's a question about maybe the Vulkan backend would work over Molten VK, which is a a Vulkan layer on top of metal. That is a possibility, but we haven't checked that one out yet. And as said, more work and research on our side is required before we know that one.
And there was also there's a one blog post if you want to check that out recently that has been playing around with that a bit, but it's not the full solution. But as said, there's no need to panic related to the Apple situation. There's actually quite many Qt users on the Mac platforms, and there's we'll also have time to discuss with them before sort of something bad happens.
Yes. Well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people using OpenGL on the Mac, so that deprecation will take time. It most likely means that Apple will not be updating to newer OpenGL versions anymore, but I think apart from that, it will probably stay around for another while. And in the past, when Apple has deprecated, these kind of APIs that we and other developers have been relying upon, we've usually been in contact with Apple, and they've been helping us as well to do the move to the new APIs. One question, what the implication of Qt for Python is for Python programmers, and how is it different from what was already existing? Qt for Python is actually the continuation of the PySide project that has been started in the Nokia days. And this is something where we now, basically said, okay, this used to be a project that has, Nokia pushed that quite a while in 2008, 2000 to 2011. But then, it has been a little bit dormant. Not much has happened. And we've been now putting a lot of work behind it to really upgrade that and start making that something that we can fully support. So it's a continuation of that project. And
that's, I think, was pretty much it for the questions. And we are actually spot on time as well with 2 minutes to go. So I think it's time to say thanks at this point. And Salla, you wanted to say something still at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Tuukka and Lars, for the great webinar. Obviously, that's the time we have for today. But if you have any more questions we didn't go through, please send us an email at info@qt.io, and we'll answer for you then. But until then, I wish you a great day or evening. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.